A TikToker is accidentally sending her grandmother to prison after an ancestry DNA test revealed the truth behind a 25-year-old cold case police couldn't solve.
Did you see the video of the girl who said she did an ancestry DNA kit, which then linked her DNA back to a 25-year-old cold case in her town, which then caused her grandma to go to jail?
So yeah, the detective was like, hey, your DNA was an exact match. Jenna's like, what the f?
Can you imagine just doing one of those ancestry things for fun and then you find out that your grandma is connected to a 25-year-old cold case? That would be crazy.
Jenna Guratowski, better known as Jenna Rose on TikTok, from Saginaw, Michigan, was intrigued after her friend chose to do an ancestry kit to find out more about their family tree and decided to do one herself. But her experience with the testing turned out a little different than her friends.
Get ready with me while I tell you about how an ancestry DNA kit is putting my grandma in prison. So, go back about 2 years ago. I watched my best friend get an ancestry DNA kit for Christmas. And I thought it was dope. I was like, I need one of those. I want to see all the cool shit that she's seeing right now. So I bought one. And I had a blast doing it. Little did I know.
Little did she know is right. Jenna had no idea how this little DNA kit would end up changing her family forever.
So I sent it in, got my results back. Everything was cool and fine. So then about a year later, I'm at work and I get a phone call and it's a detective from the Michigan State Police out of St. Ignace.
Of course, getting a random call from the police would throw anybody off, and Jenna couldn't help but jump to conclusions as to why he was contacting her.
I was like, excuse me, I was like, what the f did I do? So I start freaking out. I was like, okay, I'm either about to really go to jail or somebody is dead. So I start freaking out.
But the officer on the other end of the call soon set things straight for Jenna.
And he was like, I just want to let you know that I reopened a cold case from like 25 years ago. And he was like, and your DNA is a direct match to the victim of this case.
And he was well aware of how the call must have been coming across to her.
He was like, I know that it's shocking. He was like, and I know that it's, you know, a weekday at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I kind of just sprung this on you. He was like, but we've been investigating and your DNA matches. And I was like, okay.
As she and the man continued their conversation, he let her know that he wanted to connect her with a woman in Chicago who runs a worldwide database so that the woman could upload Jenna's DNA into the database in order to broaden their search. So, Jenna gave the man on the other end of the phone the okay to pass her number along, and he told her that the woman in Chicago would call her later that day.
So I get home from work and I'm telling my mom about this call. I was like, listen, like this is up, like listen to this. And she was like, I wouldn't like listen to that. She was like, Papa just got a phone call saying that Uncle Marcus is dead and that they needed like his social security number or something like that to confirm that it was like he was his father. And he was not dead. Like it was a scam, but freaked my grandpa out. And so my mom was like, don't, like it could be a scam, you know? So this lady calls me and I'm on the phone with her and she's like, I just need like your permission. And I was like, you have my permission, girl. I was like, whatever you need me to do, like I'll do it.
But that's when the woman asked Jenna something that, after hearing her mother's warning, sounded like a red flag.
She was like, okay, I need your password. And I was like, who the f gonna ask me for my password? That's not a scammer, you know? And so I hung up the phone.
But that wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot.
So like a week later, I get another phone call from my mom. And she was like, hey, she was like, you need to come home right now. And I was like, I'm at work. I can't just leave. And she was like, yeah, you can. She was like, it's an emergency. Like, you need to come home right now.
So, Jenna was able to leave work, and a big surprise was waiting for her when she got home.
And it was just crazy. I ended up getting home, and one of my cousins were there. And she was like, you know that phone call you got? And I was like, how did you know about that? And she was like, because there were state police at my door this morning. And I was like, okay. She was like, it's not a scam. Like, I've been in contact with them all morning. Like, you really do need to call that lady back. because they need your DNA.
And this information was enough for Jenna to approach the situation again, this time without hesitancy.
So I called her back, we uploaded my DNA into this worldwide database, and it comes back as a distant relative. So they were like, are we able to speak with your mom? And I was like, actually, she's sitting right here. So they spoke with my mother. They asked for her permission to take her DNA. So they ended up meeting up with her the next day, taking her DNA, and ended up obviously running it through the same database that they ran mine through, and ended up finding out that it's not a distant relative to my mom, but a direct relative. And the only other people that it could have been was my mom's mother. They kind of started doing their own investigating and figured out that that's who it was. So we were mind blown. Mind you, I've never met this woman before. She is literally the person that they've been looking for 25 years. And it's all because of a ancestry DNA kit.
And people in the comments were shocked, to say the least. This is absolutely mind-boggling. This is the type of gossip I live for. So like, did you get reimbursed for that kit since it helped close a case? LOL. You know grandma's like, WTH, damn it, Jenna. Some commenters were stuck on the fact that she asked for Jenna's password. I'll do whatever. I need your password. Yeah, I'd be hanging up that second too. Wait, what password did she need? Wait, why did the lady on the phone need your password? And someone had a theory. To take the exact DNA from Ancestry and submit it, probably to GED match, all they had was a name, but they wanted to get the DNA details to make a more accurate level of relation. But most were pretty concerned about the fact that police had access to her DNA results in the first place. How is no one talking about the fact that the police actually have access to this DNA data? On a different note, why did the detective have access to the Ancestry DNA? This is why I will never do one of those tests. No one's questioning why the DNA kit people are sharing that information to databases? Never done one, so not sure if you sign a consent form, but seems odd. So basically they are collecting our DNA and giving this data away? So detectives have access to Ancestry DNA data and they disclosed your private information? This is the scary fact here. I thought that they weren't allowed to use DNA results and hand them over to police. That seems like a crazy breach of privacy, no matter the good it caused. But one comment pointed something out. Nope, it's part of the fine print. What's cool is that they can use family members' DNA from DNA kits to locate killers. So many cold cases are being solved right now. But another who had recently gone through the Ancestry process themselves echoed the other sentiments. I thought they couldn't do this, get the police involved. I'm so confused. I just did this and signed the part where they said they don't give information to police. And another figured it may be all in the way it was handled that kept things above board. They had to ask for her DNA again, so I'm guessing there's some sort of loophole that says a match exists, but they have to then get the DNA from the person for it to be legal. And Jenna herself even posted another video on her TikTok account to answer some questions, this one included.
I've also seen a lot of people arguing in the comments about whether or not the police can actually use Ancestry DNA for stuff like this. They absolutely can, and they did.
So how exactly does this work? Is your data safeguarded, or is it like some of the commenters have suspected, and your DNA info is just readily available info out there for investigators to discover once you send that sample kit back to the company? When police have DNA from a decades-old case but no suspect, they can turn to genetic genealogy. They send the DNA to a lab to create a profile similar to what you'd get from a home DNA test. But here's the thing. Ancestry and 23andMe do not allow police to access their databases without a court order. So instead, police upload the profile to public databases like GED Match or Family Tree DNA, where users have opted in to allow law enforcement use. If a distant relative shows up as a match, like a third or fourth cousin, genealogists can build out a family tree using public records. That's how Jenna was found. Police didn't know she took an ancestry test. They found her through the family tree. When they contacted her, she chose to help. sharing her raw DNA. That closer match helped investigators confirm who they were really looking for. Every step would have followed legal rules, and public DNA was used with consent.
As of 2023, over 600 cold cases have been solved using investigative genetic genealogy. Simply put, you combine genealogy research with DNA analysis, and you solve mysteries. Serial killers are found using this process, and you can find the identity of Jane Does and John Does. But how can they be identified if their DNA is not already in the system? And that, my dear, is the nature of genetic genealogy. Using genealogy, finding matches, identifying second, third, fourth cousins, and working backwards to solve cases. That's how they found the Green Bay Killer and the Golden State Killer, using genetic genealogy. So whatever sample was sent to, let's say, Parabon Labs will process that DNA and then upload it to GEDmatch. Now, if you have your DNA on GEDmatch, you have the option to opt in or out of being in the police database. So many families have been helped using genetic genealogy. Personally, I solve paternity, I solve biological parents for adoptees, breakthrough genealogy brick walls. You can absolutely use that. That's why it's important to do your DNA. But you can bet your bippy if somebody asks me to solve a cold case, I'm on that, like a fat kid on chocolate.
And the thing is, Jenna's case isn't the first time this has happened. In fact, it seems to have become sort of a new trend in crime solving. I'm dealing with a similar situation. My DNA hit to a 40-year-old cold case. The whole thing is absolutely insane. My mom works for the county and she opens a ton of cold cases because of ancestry kits. It's actually kind of amazing that so many people get their justice this way. A cold case from my hometown was solved the same way, with an ancestors kit. It was a sad story and the killer shocked everyone. It was even used to solve the decades-old mystery of the Golden State Killer in 2018.
The Golden State Killer, Joseph DeAngelo, terrorized the West Coast, hurting a lot of women, unaliving a lot of women, mainly during the 70s and 80s. This man terrorized whole communities. And for more than 40 years, he went under the radar. They were never able to catch him. But thanks to DNA that was captured at the scene and preserved, he is now behind bars. So when you spit in that tube, you send it in, they'll tell you where in the world your ancestors came from and match you with other people in the database. But they don't cross-reference databases. You test with Ancestry, you get matches back from Ancestry. Now, there's a website called GEDmatch, and think of it like a master spreadsheet. So it doesn't matter who you tested with, you can download your raw data, upload it into GEDmatch, and Ancestry can compare with 23andMe, MyHeritage can compare with my Ancestry, back and forth. It's brilliant tool. Now, law enforcement working on this cold case decided to upload the Golden State Killer's DNA into this database. They didn't get a match for him, but they did find a third cousin. Third cousins share a set of great-great-grandparents. We have 16 of those. They brought in expert C.C. Moore, who was able to build a tree like this, kind of starting with the great-great-grandparents like you saw in my tree, and building out every avenue, every option to find out who the DNA belonged to. Once they'd built this tree, they came up with the number one suspect. This guy, Joseph DeAngelo. He was also a retired copper, and they were able to track his movements and whereabouts around the country to match that of the Golden State Killer. He got away with those crimes for 40 years. The DNA doesn't lie.
But some people have been hesitant to even do a DNA kit for this same reason. I legitimately asked my parents if they had committed a crime before I did my DNA test. I don't talk to my dad or his family. I have a kit sitting in my closet and I'm scared to do it for this exact reason. And others, their family members were so against the DNA testing that it raised some serious questions. My dad has always been so against me doing any kind of DNA test, but I know he has a sketchy past, and now this is my newest theory as to why. Wow, what a whirlwind. My grandparents and parents are so against a DNA test, it's not even funny. Makes me wonder if they are hiding something too. My dad begged me to stay away from these. LMAO, it makes sense now. But others took this as a reason to actually do a test. Me ordering a test kit now cause I want to bring justice if I can. Oh wow. Things like this convince me that every family should have at least one member that does this. Imagine what we'd learn. But digging into your family history can often end up getting a little dirty. My grandma blames me for opening Pandora's box about her 55-year-old lie, my mom's real birth dad, when I did a 23andMe. LOL, so yeah. DNA tests are great. My grandma got everyone DNA kits for Christmas, and my husband found out he has a half-sister, and his mother found out her dad was not her dad. DNA kits breaking up families left and right. My mom found out who her bio father was. Turns out my uncle was my father-in-law's best friend, and my 7th grade science teacher is my mom's cousin. Your story wins. My cousin did a kit and found out she had a half-brother. My uncle found out he had a kid with a one-night stand and never knew about it. He looks exactly like my uncle. It's uncanny. My family fell apart after we found my half-sister that's a few days older than me. My dad denied it. Now me and my sisters don't talk to my parents, and he's spending Thanksgiving with his new daughter. I just found out my dad isn't my dad because of ancestry, but this one takes the cake. My mom found out she was adopted at 52 from a DNA test. My gran took it to the grave. My cousin found out that the man that raised her was not her dad. One of his brothers was, all because of the Ancestry DNA kit. Apparently, our grandma knew and said, it's in the past. Found out my aunt was my mom's half-sister and that my other aunt is also my cousin because Granny was running through the brothers. Bye. Oh, we did a DNA on my dad because he was illegally adopted at birth. We have found 9 siblings so far, all the same dad. Turns out his dad was a truck driver who has kids all up the Cali coast. In Jenna's case, her digging for fun ended up unearthing dirt on a grandma she had never even met before.
So, I've never met my grandmother. I didn't even know her name until I was like 14 or 15 years old. And for reasons that are not my business to tell, when my mother's ready to tell that story, then that's on her. But I've never met my grandmother.
And solving a case that had gained a lot of attention in her hometown decades earlier.
The other little part of the backstory that I feel like people should know is that this case was very popular in the town that I grew up in because it was so up.
And what was that case?
It was the Baby Garnet case.
Due to legal reasons, Jenna wasn't able to get into the details of the case, so let's provide some context.
In 1997, the remains of an infant aged between 36 and 42 weeks were discovered in a campground toilet at Garnet Lake, Michigan. After nearly 6 months of investigation, police were unable to find any leads or witnesses, leaving the case cold and the unidentified baby known as Baby Garnet.
Sadly, Jenna's grandmother, Nancy Gierotowski, who she had never met and whom her mother had reportedly not spoken to since she was 18 years old, gave birth to a baby girl in 1997. The child was full term, or close to it, but didn't receive the medical care she needed and didn't survive. According to officials, the baby likely would have lived with proper treatment. Nancy is believed to have concealed the newborn in the waste vault beneath a campground porta potty, where a maintenance worker discovered the remains several days later. With no way to identify the baby or her mother at the time, the case remained unsolved for over 2 decades. With the help of genetic genealogy findings, continued investigation by police, along with Jenna and her mother's consent to share their DNA, Nancy was finally found. Over the decades since the incident, Nancy had relocated to Wyoming. She was arrested there in July 2022 after being identified through genetic genealogy and a follow-up DNA match obtained with a search warrant. She was then extradited to Mackinac County, Michigan, where the crime took place in 1997, to face charges. The charges included
1 count each of open murder, involuntary manslaughter, and concealing the death of an individual.
The first of which carries with it the potential of a life sentence. But during the trial, Nancy and her defense refused to take responsibility.
So, allegedly, according to Michigan's Attorney General, Nancy, the grandmother, delivered the baby at home in the bathtub. She says she was alone and that Baby Garnet died due or passed due to asphyxiation.
Her attorney claimed that she lost the baby while attempting to give birth by herself.
She claims she lost consciousness at some point during the delivery. She claims that when she was able to finish delivering the baby, that Baby Garnet had passed.
Defense also claimed that her actions that followed were due to her not having access to a phone to seek medical help and to the shock of the traumatic experience. Despite those claims, A judge reviewed the evidence in 2024 and decided there was enough to send the case to trial. That process, called being bound over, basically means the case cleared the first major legal hurdle. Nancy is currently out on bond with a GPS monitor while the court continues to work through pre-trial motions, including whether certain statements she made can be used in court. In 2025, she filed an appeal to challenge some of those rulings, but the court denied her request to delay the trial. So, while no official trial date has been set yet, the case is still very much moving forward. And with this heartbreaking case being brought to light, some commenters were concerned with how Jenna was doing with everything. Ma'am, first vid I've seen of you, LOL, thanks for all the tea. Are you okay though? 'Cause holy No, we're not, but this is why we're trying to advocate for her. She didn't deserve what she went through.
I can't even explain how traumatizing the situation has been. But the people that actually have love in their hearts are showing it, and I really do appreciate that. I saying that for me and my mother. So thank you. Please keep listening, and please keep telling our story, because she deserves it.
And a few others had an idea for Jenna. Oh, this is about to be a Lifetime movie. I'm ready. Call Netflix. And she had some good news for those who wanted to see the drama unfold on screen.
I would like to tell you guys that there is so much to our story that we want to tell you, but we want to do it the right way. We have decided to take a documentary approach to this, and we have decided to meet with producers. We are hoping that one day this will be a documentary that people can watch. So we're working on that for people.
What started as a simple DNA test for fun ended up unlocking a buried family secret and solving a decades-old mystery. But with the answers came a ripple effect, forcing a family to reckon with a past they never knew they were part of. If you found this story interesting, consider subscribing to our channel to help us continue creating new videos, like this one, about the mother of 200 kids people believe was assassinated and how Mr. Beast is getting involved.